Thank you for joining us this World Penguin Day 2022. I am Katie Propp, the Conservation Education Director at Penguins International, and I am so excited to welcome Dr. Michelle LaRue, the Associate Professor of Antarctic Marine Science at University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and of course, the recipient of our 2022 World Penguin Day Scientist Spotlight. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so excited to honor you this World Penguin Day and all of your incredible work. And of course, we have so many questions. So we'll just dive right in. Can you please share with our audience about your current penguin research?
Yeah, so I guess the current penguin research that is kind of like front and center for me right now is finishing up understanding the population trends for emperor penguins over the past 10 years. And so what we've done there is gone through and looked at every single colony. There are 54 colonies of emperor penguins around the continent, around the Antarctic continent, and we look at them from space. So this from high resolution imagery, and we basically figured out by looking at the images and counting all of the birds, basically, we've been able to figure out how the animals are doing over the past 10 years.
So incredible. It's just like space, science. I mean, it's all in one and wrapped up with a nice bow. I love that. Can you share with us a little bit how you first got introduced to penguin research? Like, how did this become your pathway?
Yeah, so I feel really lucky to have been introduced the way that I was. So I'll try to make a long story short, but I was making maps for the United States Antarctic program, and my educational and experiential background was in wildlife ecology and also in map making and like GIS, geographic information systems. And so I was making maps for folks in Antarctica. And kind of just along the way, as I was making these maps, I got introduced to several people, probably most notably Dr. David Ainley, who does a lot of work on many different penguin species, and notably Adelie penguins, actually. And so through that introduction, I, of course, was really excited to potentially be, talking to him and things. And so after that introduction, I then kind of got access or learned more about this high resolution imagery and the things that we could do with it. And then I was introduced to some of my colleagues at the British Antarctic Survey, Phil Trathan and Peter Fretwell. And after doing some reading and things like that, we converged on this idea of being able to see and enumerate penguins from space. And so that was really my first ever work on emperor penguins.
That is so incredible. It's funny how all of these little connections help us meet people and bring us to different places and different countries all over the world, all for penguins and other, research opportunities. So I just love that you shared that with us. So of course, everyone's wondering, what is your favorite penguin species?
So it is true that my favorite penguin species is the emperor penguin, and I do have a picture to show everybody why they are so special. So this is a picture that I took of some emperor penguins at Cape Crozier. The one thing I do want to note is I'm actually quite far away from these birds. We did have a permit to be there and to do the activity here. So I want to be clear about that, because it's not as though you can just waltz up to penguins and do whatever it is that you want to do. This picture was actually taken with a telephoto lens from quite some time, or quite some distance away, excuse me. But emperor penguins, I feel like there's just so many things happening in this picture that really exemplify why I love them. First and foremost, for me, to anthropomorphize them, I guess a little bit, they're very calm. They tend to be very calm and kind of don't really care so much that people are around, particularly if we're doing the right thing, which is staying far back and not bothering them. And they just seem to really know what it is they're doing. They need to survive. They need to raise their chicks. And so what you're looking at here, kind of in the middle of the picture, there are two parents, of course, and the chick is in the middle there. And so the parents have come back together after foraging in the ocean, and they're raising that little chick. And so as you can kind of see in the background, there's lots of other things happening as well. There are other parents and chick kind of groupings together, but these animals are just incredibly well adapted to some really, really harsh conditions. And they can survive, year in, year out in some of the coldest, harshest conditions that Earth has to provide. So they're incredibly cool animals.
They are so cool, like literally.
Yeah, quite literally, yeah.
I just love emperor penguins too. And that image is so captivating, just seeing how they're never just standing there. They're all just doing so many different things all the time. I feel like a lot of times when we see these birds in zoos and aquariums, you're staring at them and you're like, oh, they just kind of look like they're standing there. But really all of those communications are happening all at once, which I think is just so special to see in the wild. Can you share a little bit too about your favorite research project that you've worked on so far, and maybe why that was your favorite?
I will say, I think the one that I'm doing right now in finishing up is my favorite, primarily because it took a really long time to get to the place that we are right now, and by which I mean I'm one of the principal investigators on it. So it took a long time to get there. And so what this project entailed, this population trend project entailed, was not only looking at the animals in all of these colonies from satellite imagery, but we also had to do some aerial surveys to kind of do some validation. And so what that means basically is flying over the colonies, as many colonies as we could, taking pictures of them, counting them up, and saying, okay, if we counted, for example, 20,000 birds at a particular colony, what does that mean when we're looking at the high resolution imagery? Do those two things compare, or how do we make these comparisons and turn the pixels that we see from the high resolution imagery into an actual number of birds? And so that entailed a really long aerial flight, actually on Halloween of 2018.
Wow.
We flew up the coastline. Yeah, it was great. Our pilot actually dressed up.
Awesome. Like a penguin?
Yeah. No, he didn't. No, he was just kind of wearing a wild shirt, really, really colorful shirt. And I completely forgot that I was so focused on waking up early and getting to the airport basically on time. I completely forgot it was Halloween. But so that entails a really long flight, because the Antarctic coastline, flying from McMurdo Station, which is the U.S. the largest station in Antarctica, and it's kind of a hub for lots of activity on the continent. We flew from McMurdo Station all the way up to Cape Roget, which is several hundred miles to the north, and then we flew all the way back. And so it takes a really long time to do that. And along the way, we stopped at multiple emperor penguin colonies and pretty much, stuck our cameras to the window and took as many pictures as we could. And then we stitched them all together and counted them all and came up with it. Yeah, it took quite a while. But the reason that was so special for me is because that was the beginning of the whole thing. Like you can't really do as good a job in understanding what we're looking at from the satellite images if we don't have that ground validation and that kind of check to make sure that what we're seeing from space is actually what's being represented on the ground. And so, as I mentioned, that happened in 2018. So that was several years ago, and we're just now coming to kind of the closure of that project. And so it's been a lot of fun. I've been able to work with some of the best minds in the world. It's a great privilege for sure.
That's so exciting. And is that published yet, or will that be published soon?
Well, it has to go up for peer review first. So providing that the people who review it are okay with our approach and how we went about it, then hopefully sometime later this year it will be published.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to keep our eyes on that when
please do.
Ready. That's really exciting. And of course, I just know that so many people are interested in getting involved in helping out with penguins. We get numerous emails regularly of like, how can I help the penguins? So can you share a little bit about how fans can get involved with citizen science projects, any projects that you know about that you would highly recommend?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and there's lots of different ways to be involved, and it kind of depends on what you want to do. So obviously, being able to donate time or money to a project that's already ongoing is a really, fairly easy way to go about kind of helping right away if you want to be able to do that or have the means to be able to do that. So that's one way to get involved. If you're interested in a citizen science type project, there are a couple of different ways to do that. The one that I can think of at the moment, although I'm not sure it's still running, would be Penguin Watch. So if you go to zooniverse.org, that is a citizen science platform where you can do all kinds of really cool studies. And one of them is to look at penguins from trail camera. So basically, researchers will put out these cameras that just take pictures every hour, every half an hour, and then the Zooniverse platform, so the job of the citizen scientist then is to go in and actually count all of the birds that you see from these trail camera photos, and that helps scientists understand when the birds are coming back to their colonies. And this is not emperor penguins. This would be more for like chinstraps and gentoos and adeles and other birds or other penguins that live on land. And so that helps understand, their phenology. So when they come back, how many eggs turn into chicks, how many chicks are successfully hatching. That gives us all kinds of information. So that's a really easy way to do it as well. And I also believe there's a capacity on penguinmap.com, which is a website that is hosted by a collaborator of mine. And they also look at satellite imagery, and there's kind of a way that you can kind of just search around on satellite images to see if you can see emperor penguins or other species as well. So then I think the last thing as far as being involved is if you're interested in doing research and getting a formal education to do the kind of work that my colleagues and I are lucky enough to do. I think the best way to go about doing that is to get a degree in science or policy, something that's focused on understanding the biology of the birds, or how different policy actions, I guess, could potentially impact them.
Awesome. I know there's so many young people out there that are trying to figure out their career paths and figuring out, how do I get to Antarctica? How many times have you been to Antarctica?
I've been to Antarctica 8 times.
Oh my gosh.
There's been a couple times that have gotten canceled, of course, because of the pandemic, and then also just because of weather and things. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's one of those things a lot of people ask, like, how do I get down there? I would like to see the penguins down there. I'd like to get involved. So I love that you mentioned the career route of going through college and getting all the certifications that you need, especially through policy, because that's something that we absolutely need more advocates in governments around the world to help with penguins.
Yeah, and it's really important for people who are making policies to understand and to be able to speak the language, right? And likewise, it's also really beneficial for scientists to understand what those policy actions and documents language means, right? So having that kind of that interface and being able to at least speak those kind of 2 different languages, I think is really important.
I think that kind of leads well into my next question, which is, why is penguin research so important?
In general, penguins are great because they exist, right? Like they are there, and so they have they're just because they exist, they're cool, first of all. But secondly, they are really great indicators for the health of the ocean, right? So if we're thinking not only about just the penguin species and their ability to survive because they're part of the environment, they're part of our Earth. If you're thinking about it from perhaps a little bit more of a utilitarian framework and trying to say, like, okay, what is it about these animals that can tell us more about the environment? They're great for that because they obviously have to forage in the ocean. And so they can tell us a little bit about ocean health. So if you see penguin populations that maybe aren't doing so well, or maybe if they are doing really well, that can give you a little bit of an indication about what might be happening in the nearby ocean. And then, of course, if it's something not in the ocean, then in places like here in New Zealand, there's several different penguin species that obviously nest on land. This would not be emperor penguins, of course. But then that can tell you a little bit about, okay, well, are there diseases that are impacting their populations? Are there predators that are having an impact on, breeding success and things like that? So watching how penguin populations are doing gives us an idea about other things that might be happening in the surrounding environment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then, of course, how are you celebrating World Penguin Day this year?
Yes, I think so. There's a couple things. Probably number one, I'm going to be doing a lot of tweeting on Twitter about penguins. I really like to do that. I will very likely be also doing the same with the IUCN's Penguin Specialist Group, so the International Union on the Conservation of Nature. There's a penguin specialist group, and we like to take as many opportunities as we can to provide information on Twitter and elsewhere about penguins. So those are probably the two primary ways that I will be celebrating, and probably also with my lab. I don't know, doing a penguin talk or something.
Awesome. I just put your handle up here so everyone can follow you and read your tweets as you tweet today. And of course, we also have your website. So I'm going to have that pop up here as well. So can you share a little bit more how people can continue to connect with you after this call is over?
Yes, absolutely. A really great way is definitely through my website. I do check my website relatively frequently. Obviously, email is great, and you can always contact me on Twitter as well. Yeah, these are all fantastic ways to get a hold of me. I love answering questions and communicating with people about lots of different things, but penguins in particular.
Wonderful. And I know that we're probably going to have some penguin fans that are commenting live below throughout this entire interview process. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for being our science spotlight today. We just absolutely love and adore all of the work that you do for penguins. And it's really just such a team of people around the world that are taking these actions to help these wonderful creatures. So thank you again, Michelle, and hopefully we'll connect with you again soon.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And yes, while I'm here, definitely the work that I do is definitely not alone. I have an awesome team around me. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Happy World Penguin Day, everyone. Bye.
Happy World Penguin Day.